I get to spread out, which is good.
Yeah, start.
Yeah, because Pauline uses the blankets.
Oh, yeah.
Don't know.
Did you do a call to order? What does that mean?
Okay.
I'd like to bring to order the regular council meeting of Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Call to order. Number 2, adoption of the agenda. Recommend the council adopts the agenda. Seconder. Any discussion? All in favor? Adoption of the minutes. Recommend the council adopts the minutes from the last regular council meeting held on March 6, 2024. Discussion?
Second.
Oh, second. Discussion.
So I've got 2 questions. One would be on page 6. It's Mayor Beach and Councillor Wall recuse themselves for the DVP, but it doesn't mention when they return to the meeting, unless I'm missing that line. And then the second piece would be, I'm a little confused on the motion regarding mayor attending Keeping It Rural conference. It says carried unanimously, but then later on it says all opposed. Just for clarification on that, that motion was eventually defeated, but is that saying that it was seconded it and brought to the floor, or is that saying that it was actually accepted as a motion?
Where are you?
So,
It's on page 5, number 6.6.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page.
When you first introduce them, when you first read it, you guys do a first and second to bring the recommendation forward. So that was carried unanimously to bring the motion forward to discuss it. Then council had a discussion and Councillor Waddell asked what the economic benefits were after the discussion. They voted on if the mayor should attend. All voted in favor of the mayor not attending. So it was all opposed. And it was Johnston and Waddell who put that motion forward.
Yes. In regards to the same motion, the way it reads that council approves travel, registration, and accommodations for the mayor to attend the Keeping It Rural conference. And then it says carried unanimously. That was the motion.
It was carried unanimously to discuss.
To discuss. It doesn't say to discuss though. It says,
This is how it's always in the minutes.
but it doesn't say that council discusses the travel registration.
Yes, it does. It says council had a discussion if you go to the second one.
Council had a discussion and Councillor Woodall asked the economic benefits of the village are.
my interpretation of Robert's rules would be that yes, it was moved and then seconded to brought to the floor for discussion, but the motion itself was not carried. Therefore,
The discussion was carried.
The discussion was seconded, but then the motion was defeated. Because as this stands right now, it's that we approve the mayor's travel and then unanimously oppose the mayor's travel.
What would you like it to say?
I would like it to say all opposed instead of carried unanimously.
I'm not gonna say all opposed to that because nobody was opposed to it.
We all voted opposed to it.
You opposed the second
We
part,
opposed the
not the
second
first
part of
part.
her actually going.
Sorry, but I'm not changing it.
Could we put in there?
I can put discussion.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest, that council approves discussion on travel, registration, and accommodations, because that was approved unanimously, and then.
How would I add that council approves discussion for travel registration? Because that part was carried
I
unanimously.
think that would clarify it a little bit.
it would make sense, because simply the way that that motion is worded would be a motion enabling the funding of attendance of that conference, which was opposed and defeated. Therefore, I put the motion on the floor to amend that motion as noted in the minutes to state that council approves the discussion of travel, registration, accommodation, and so forth.
Second that.
All in favor? Okay.
And then
Yes.
on page 6, in regards to when the mayor and a fellow councillor recuse themselves, is there a portion which notes in the minutes when they return back to the chambers?
No, but put it in there.
I therefore move that the time at which Mayor Beach and Councillor Wall returned to the chambers be added to the minutes to accurately reflect that we went from 5 members to 3 and then back to 5 at the time, because then it's, the next motion's moved by the mayor, which doesn't make sense, so.
We need a seconder on this.
Mhm.
Mr. Wall, all in favor of adding the note? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Wall.
Last one for me on this particular minutes. On number 8.1, that council considers the resolution put forward by myself to be submitted to the NCLGA. Could we include that resolution in the minutes for public transparency? I'd like to see that.
A second.
All in favor?
I forgot one. Councilor Wall? You forgot one.
Oh, yes, at the very big, you already fixed that, didn't you?
Yeah, but I still need you to make the motion.
Oh, I also would make the motion, where was it?
Page 1.
Page one,
Correction of
right at the top.
CFO title.
To correct the the CFO title from CAO to CFO.
Thank you.
Second by Mr. Woodall, all in favor?
I hope I said that the way
Carried.
I want to. You know what I mean.
So it's a recommendation that council accept the minutes with the changes.
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor Rabble, all in favor? Introduction of late items, none. Unfinished business and business arising from the minutes. 5.1 recommendation.
That council approves the letter of support for Extreme Mud Fest Dawson Creek.
Seconder? Will? Any discussion? Mr. Rabel.
I believe it's brief, but it gets the point across, as long as this is what this organization's looking for in regards to a letter of support, so that their festival can go forward, and that all due considerations have been taken in regards to fire protection.
Yes, Ms. Stokes.
I reached out to Miss Eason about the fire protection. If you remember on the report from the PRRD, it claims that they are not in fire district at all. So we talked about temporarily expanding boundaries. That's not a possibility. There would be a big process through the PRRD. But I did talk to Miss Eason, and they're gonna have water trucks on site and fire extinguishers, and they are not prohibiting any fires on the property for the festival.
Not permitted. Okay.
I think we're under a full fire ban.
No, you can still have campfires right now. Full fire ban comes, or category 2 and 3 on March 28th, but you can still have campfires.
Mr. Rabel.
Sorry, for clarification, Ms. Stokes had said they may prohibit fires or permit
They
fires?
are prohibiting fires.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Any recommendation? I'll make the recommendation that council approves the letter of support for Mudfest Dawson Creek. Second by Woodall. All in favor? New business, 6.1 recommendation.
Did we just vote on that one twice?
Brought it to the floor and then approved it.
Get sent.
The council receives the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for discussion.
Second. Mr. Woodall, any discussion? Discussion, all in favor? Oh,
I do have to go on as well.
oh, you just go there.
Mike, can you hear us?
Sure can.
Okay. Go for it.
Hey, hello everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I'll just give a short overview of the what is presented tonight. The changes to the report that I presented in the first council meeting is twofold: increased in revenues and then including the capital budget. So you'll see in the revenue, we're looking at about a $5,672,000 in revenues. That's including the 2.4 million for the lagoon project, plus the full $1,115,000 of the PRA monies. So you're looking at revenues of, as I said, of about just over our 5,672,000, and with operating expenditures of 2.7 million and 25,000, or 26,000 if you round up. The expenditures, oh, I should go back to the revenues. I forgot to mention this. Per the quest from council last meeting, what I've done is included tax revenues, an increase of 20,000 this year, and that would increase about be about 100,000 increase in tax revenues, and then in the future 4 years of 10%. We're looking at a capital budget of just under 2.9 million, 2,870,000, which gives us a $76,000 surplus. So this budget, as presented, increases your expenditures from last year by about $200,000 in your operating expenditures. That's due to the increased position, to the CAO position. That's kept the same, plus the COLA charges from the union and union agreements, and some other increase in costs. So in this budget as presented, you're giving about 546,000 of the PRA monies to capital. So you're short, say it's going to be around 250,000 that you're short. The revenues, and sorry for being a little disjointed tonight, the revenues also includes increase of $96,000 that we're receiving for gas tax revenues as well. I forgot to put that in the report. I'm sorry. So council asked to show the future of if we do increases, what increases are needed to use the monies for the PRA to capital, and there you are. If you notice on page, it's page 3 of my report, you'll see that I've got basically on life cycle costing, and I have a report that would be presented at a later meeting. I recommend that the monies that you should be putting towards capital is around 1.4 million. Now, the water and sewer infrastructure, there's some, that's from the urban systems recommendations, that has some, I won't say wiggle room, but that could be approached by council, and that can be discussed at a later time. However, that 1.4 million is a real number. So you look at, for example, in paving that I gave, that is an estimation of repaving your roads over 35 years. That's what you'd need. You need to put in your reserves just under $600,000 a year, so you can pave your roads. It's a daunting challenge, and with the understanding that in 10 to 12 years that you could see the end of the Peace River Agreement. I think one of the things that you have to look at when you're planning is that the monies in 10, 12 years may not be there. The million, the $1.1 million, $1.2 million that we get a year from the PRA monies may not exist in 10, 12 years. It may, but I think you have to plan that it would be prudent to plan that they're not there in 10, 12 years. Most of the other stuff is a repeat. As I said, if you look in the capital, I'll just go over the capital budget. As I put in the report, it's just under 3 million. And of that, 2.4 million is the sewage lagoon, which is fully funded. We put in a road maintenance budget of 200,000. That's for culvert and some paving. There is also a request for a new command truck, of which 40,000 is funded for a skid unit. The truck and the additional equipment that you would need would be, you're looking at about $110,000 for the truck and another 60 for the additional equipment that you would need on it. Also in the capital budget, there's protective fire gear of about 60,000. And it's a part of a 4-year program to replace your gear. So I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Mr. Wall,
Yep.
you had your hand up. Here you go.
So I see in the financial plan here, 2024 to 2028. In 2024, the suggestion is a 20% tax increase. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not. This is a scenario. Obviously, it's up to you guys to do what you. I just did it to show you to match the increases that you've made in this year's operating expenditures, or to better match it. Because you've increased your operating expenditures by 200,000, so we've increased your revenues by 100,000. It gives you an idea how your tax revenues. If you increase your operating revenues, there's a corresponding increase that you got to make in your tax revenues.
So I see taxes as it's a balancing act. We can either raise taxes if we need to, or we can cut expenses. It's not just about raising the taxes an additional 20%. Are we planning on cutting anything this year in this plan? In regards to contractors, $400,000 on urban systems, and they did mostly bylaws and things like that. $140,000 for financial services. That does not include our CFO wage, your wage, things like that.
I don't know could you tell me how you've come up with the number for urban systems? Where you've come up with that?
That was at the last meeting on March 6th is where that number came up, under the budget line for contracted services.
It wasn't 400.
No, it was not 400.
100 and something, wasn't it?
The urban last year?
Yeah.
The budget line was 400 or
No,
something.
it wasn't. We tried to find what you were talking about. There was no 400,000 there.
There's no expenditure that there is no in last year's budget. The urban systems, there was it $110,000? I forget for your OCP planning, which is mandatory, and you guys approved it last year. I don't know of any other.
What about that $140,000 budget line for financial services? That we did.
What do you mean by that? I don't even know. Is there an account number that you've given? What do you mean?
It was in the budget sheet we received at the last meeting on March 6th.
If you can highlight it and send it in to Trina, we can certainly answer it. I don't have the information at hand to answer that. I don't know what you're referring to.
Without knowing where this money is going, or where we can cut, I honestly can't even consider a 20% tax increase. Like, I'm not even gonna think about it.
So Councillor Wall, the direction I received from council, and this is not obviously not set in stone, was to provide scenarios with tax increases, what it would look like in a trend. This is just to give you an example, what the tax increases are that are needed to get you on side with the PRA agreement.
Mr. O'Reilly?
So essentially, we must ask of ourselves first before we ask of our community. And essentially what that means is I understand that the request was to seek out a balanced budget for the long term, presuming that certain funding sources will be eliminated in the long term. And I appreciate that you've done the work for that, but to ask 20% of the community at this time, when there's a cost of living crisis, and essentially what that would do would be, yes, it would change our tax. So from 23 total for municipal tax, it's about $483,000. That increase it to $576,000. But the per capita municipal tax would go from $363 per person to an additional $73 per person, which would be $436 per person. And I believe that that would discourage investment in our community, and it would discourage businesses who are, some of which are leaving our community at an alarming pace. So I think we need to ask of what we are spending on firstly before we say 20%. And yes, we are an affordable community as of right now, but the communities which have higher tax rates, and I have done an analysis on comparable population communities within British Columbia, there's about 107 of them. And some are higher and some are lower for a variety of reasons. However, those communities that are higher tax rates provide more services. They've got water parks and swimming pools and bigger fields and all of these things that cost more money to operate. How can we ask 20% more when we are not providing 20% more? And I understand we need to get ourselves into a very prudent fiscal position to look forward and go, how do we make this community the best place it can be, while also respecting the people that live here and the businesses that want to exist here, and stop the bleeding of businesses from our community. Make sure that this is a good place to invest. So I see there are some assumptions, and I'm curious about the sewage lagoon. It is a necessary feat. However, it assumes that it will be fully funded by the village. However, it does note that this might be potentially funded by a federal grant. So in a hypothetical scenario where this federal grant does come in for the sewage lagoon, how would that adjust these calculations?
It's already set up that the grant has been approved and it fully funds the project. So you've got revenue of $2.4 million and you've got a project for $2.4 million. It's a zero net impact.
Yes.
Okay, so it zeroes it out. Then in the piece regarding depreciation of assets, sorry, so am I correct in the understanding of the $1.4 million to be the depreciation of capital assets, that on one hand we must rebuild over time back to what has been lost, but on the other hand, we can essentially, in layman's terms, write it off as an amortized depreciation? Am I correct in that understanding?
So depreciation is separate from depreciation. You're being a public sector entity. If you look at your depreciation, it's both an expense and then it's funded in the above. So there's revenue to fund your expenditures. It's the quirk of public sector accounting. So it adds, so there's no there's no minus in this budget in this plan as presented for depreciation. The expenditures for the capital, what I'm saying in the document is, if Pouce Coupe is going to be sustainable, and you have choices, and that will be at a later meeting, but you're looking at a capital budget or monies that you should put into reserves by urban systems for your water and capital and even paving of about 1.4 million. I can show you the numbers that I would recommend that be another meeting. Not at this. I was giving those numbers just to show you why you need the surplus that you need. You require at least the Peace River Agreement monies to be to go towards your capital. Because the point would be that in 10, 12 years, if the PRA agreement goes and you're still using PRA monies for operating, there is would be a question of how viable Pouce would be as a community. This isn't your fault. This is this council's fault. This is a problem within most of the municipal sector that there's been no life cycle costing. And if you look at in the categories of both equipment, you're funding your equipment and your paving, you will never get grants for revenue grants for either paving or equipment. So you have to look at fully funding. The advantage, all I'm trying to say in this document, say for example, in equipment, you know that your pumper trucks will be a life cycle of 20 years. And you right now cost you $1 million to purchase a new pumper. So you should be setting around $50,000 a year for a new pumper truck.
Mr. Ball. On the March 6th meeting, it was brought up that there was a budget line presented at the March 6th meeting that was approximately $11,000. That was for food for staff and council when we do things. I want to make the motion to strike that budget line completely. It was. On March 6th, there was. Well, I make the motion that we don't purchase any food for us or staff. That's the first thing we should cut. If we're asking for 20%, we need to make sacrifice food.
Stokes.
Can we bring back both budgets so you guys can go through them and you can tell us what you want eliminated? Instead of just doing it off the top of our heads? Would that be okay?
I'm okay with that.
I still made the motion.
Nobody seconded it.
Nobody seconded.
So I'll second it to bring it to discussion.
Well, I think if we're asking for a 20% tax increase, we should be looking at what we can cut, and the first thing that we could cut is food. Simple, easy. Everyone's getting paid to be here.
The reason I bring this to the floor and the spirit that I believe the member is getting at is fripperies should be reduced as much as possible if we even begin to think of asking the community for more tax. We should be conscientious of our spending to such a degree that we eliminate the unnecessary things. And that does start with the things that are not necessary, which are meals and council meetings, dinners, certain expenditures that may seem small individually, but add up to a cumulative whole that could save quite a lot. Colored printing, certain information technology contracts and systems. And yes, I understand off the cuff, eliminating each line is not the best approach, and we should have a more concerted effort to do so. But there's a lot of spending that has my eyebrows raised, that I want to assure the community that we are as fiscally prudent, as fiscally responsible as possible, and that we're stewards of good finance in this community.
Mr. Woodall.
So first of all, I'd like to see the line item numbers that the councilors are referring to, because when I went through, I don't recall seeing those. So I'd like to see those numbers actually come forward if that's what we're gonna start doing. The other thing is the councilors have had this budget in front of them now for weeks, almost a month, right? So the time to, you know, make those cuts and inquire about those should have been over this next month or last month, when you're looking at where they were, as those things popped up and you wanted information on them, not at a council meeting where you don't have the numbers in front of you, so we have information to make the call. The other thing is we're not voting on a 20% increase. Mr. McPhail is bringing forward numbers so that we can look at what our options are, saying 20% at the high end, so that we can look at bringing Pouce Coupe into alignment, so that we're actually on side. Because this year we have a $240,000, $250,000 over from last year, because we are looking at potential staff changes and other stuff going down the road. That is something that's impacted our budget, right? So that right there, adding another wage to our roster is what's our biggest increase by far. And the thing is, these are just numbers that we can look at so that we can get an idea that we asked for, so that we can make this village sustainable, so that in 10 to 12 years time, we still have a village that's here and these people still have jobs, we still have a community. So unfortunately, the shitty part of it is, and I apologize for my language, is we've got to make tough decisions in the next couple of years. Otherwise, at the end of the day, this village is going to be handed over to the PRD or not be here. So as crappy as it sounds, and I do understand, yes, we need to look at trimming costs and trimming fat, and there is a cost to doing business, we have to remember that as well. But we've had these for the last month, right? So those things should have been coming to us sooner, not tonight on a whim saying this number, that number, when you don't have the exact numbers on you. I get where you're coming from, and yeah, there is some stuff we need to potentially sit down and look at where we can trim and look really tightly. But just randomly throwing out numbers and saying this is where it's gonna be, this is how rumors start, misinformation starts within the community, right? So I just asked the council if we're gonna, yes, but you don't have the numbers back in front of you to refer back to, right? That's because 2 weeks ago that we had this, you did not bring your numbers in saying, this is the line item, but that's my issue, right? If we had the line item that we could all look at or reference to, then we're all on the same page and know what we're talking about. And unfortunately, we talk about saving costs. Well, nights that we sit here and we have these kind of debates and we talk about saving $1,000 here or $200 there on pizza, right? We're paying Mr. McPhail. We're paying Mr. McPhail to be here. I'd like to see those numbers, but again, we're wasting time because now we're paying for a contractor to sit here and listen to us argue over numbers that we don't have in front of us, so we can't even make a decision on right now.
Right.
To respond to the member, if you look at corporate office supplies, various $21,630, 121111101 Admin office supplies, various $1,220, 11211311012.
Last agenda.
Yeah, may I interject, please?
Is that Schedule B?
This is Schedule B, and then the other piece would be council materials and supply, $10,000. We did underspend on some of those budgets, but the example, the spirit, the understanding is simply those three lines alone are $32,000. And it's going, okay, what are these supplies? How can we help reduce
Could we
that?
not ask staff what those supplies are and have them give us a breakdown of that? Because just assuming that that's all food or whatever, right? Supplies can be a vast amount of things. So, you know, if we'd like those numbers, then it would be something to ask staff for a more of a breakdown sent out to us, so that you can actually see the line items of what they are, instead of making the assumption that that's all food, right? Because dollars to donuts, I bet that that's not all food, right? A good chunk of that is supplies. It's going to be administrative supplies, office supplies, that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure that our staff have a reasonable explanation for those expenses.
That's right.
Thank you. So essentially, the long and the short is, I appreciate that we've been presented with some numbers that we can chew on, and we've got some previous numbers as well. And certainly I'm willing to do the work, and I've been doing some of the work as well in regards to what are we spending, what are we looking at. And I think it is very prudent of us to assess what we're spending on. And that's simply the brass tacks on it is, we need to think about what we're spending first before we start asking for more. And we need to be more efficient in regards to that. And there are some assumptions, because a budget is a lot of assumptions. We don't know exactly what the world's gonna do. We don't know what inflation's gonna do. You know, inflation in regards to the increase of cost of goods also means an increase in the returns on our investments and reserves. It's weights and balances game. But in that calculation, we must consider the community. And I understand the member's point regarding what do we look at, what do we have in 15, 20 years, but then it's also how do we get there? And jacking up rates at a time like this, in such a tough spot with new taxes and increased taxes, and it's hitting people at the wrong time. And yes, we can get on a track to long-term financial sustainability, but to make up for decades of lost time will take time. And I think that starts with an internal reflection before an external reflection.
Well,
To Councilor Rule's point there, so I just scrolled through the last agenda on the council phone there, and it was not included in the last agenda. It was as a late item, so it wasn't available for public inspection in there. But I will bring it forward next time, and the questions I asked, if you watched the videos or remember the last meeting on March 6th, I did ask about those budget lines specifically. So, and I was told that there would be answers at this meeting, so that's why I'm asking them again. That's why they're in my notes, and that's why I'm asking them. So I'm curious about that, and why I'm confused at why others are confused, and I'm asking the same questions again. Because that's a large
No,
number.
you're asking for that to be struck without having all the information. You're asking for an entire budget line item to be struck, which can't be struck because it's what they spent last year. It's a budget line item, it's already been spent. Now,
I don't want
budgeting going
this
forward, then that's different. That's not striking the line item, that's amending the budget or looking at asking staff if they could bring back the numbers and alter those numbers. That's not striking that line item. Because striking that line item is not doable, it's a line item that was already spent. So making a motion to that is, you see where I'm coming from on that?
I want that money to no longer be being spent in the way it is. If it's spent, it's gone.
how is it spent, but we don't know.
That was answered at the last
We don't
meeting.
have a breakdown.
Okay, I'm gonna end this right now. I put a motion on the floor that at the next
There's already a
council.
motion on the
There is a motion on the floor, we have to vote on.
Can't put another one
Well,
on yet.
I want those numbers that presented to us at the last meeting to be available for public inspection at the next meeting.
What numbers? And
In
they
the late
are
item,
there in
the late
minutes.
item. I want the late item from the last meeting that isn't in the agenda to be on the agenda at the next meeting so that the public can look at the line items. And if they watch the
Okay,
videos,
I
they
don't
can
take
see.
kindly.
Okay, point of order, there's a
amending.
motion on the floor that needs to be voted on before we start making other motions.
Any more discussion on the motion? All in favor of striking the budget line off
Food.
for food?
In council food? Yeah.
Yes.
All opposed?
Motion defeated.
I want my opposed noted as I think it's irresponsible making decisions without having the numbers actually in front of us to actually see what line items, especially with the numbers that you're throwing out. I want to actually have those in front of us and brought back, so
I think
that's my concern with it.
I think we could stop spending money on food for ourselves.
Well, while you're at it, you might as well cut council's wage, or stipend while you're at it too.
Sure.
That'll save us a couple thousand.
Mr. Rabel?
I'm assuming we're still in regards to this financial plan, so I have a question of Mr. McPhail. In kind of conclusion to that 1.4 million in regards to capital, this is simply an estimate of the amount of money we will have to continue to put in reserves in order to sustain the same level of infrastructure we currently have. Am I correct in that understanding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion?
I'm gonna put the motion on the floor that the financial plan that was provided to us at the last meeting on March 6th is late item be included in the next agenda for public inspection.
Would you want to include your schedule B in those line items?
Sorry.
seconding that?
I'm confused, well, point of order, I'm confused on the motion.
I want the late item from the last meeting on March 6th regarding the budget to be included in the printed copies of the public agenda for the next meeting, so that we can discuss the line items that Councillor Waddell are asking for. Because they're not in front of us, and it was a late item, they're not online. So I'm looking like a fool. I want the same exact thing brought forward from March 6th.
I believe that's scheduled, because you referenced that they're scheduled B, line.
It's
Two,
late
one,
items,
one, two.
it's late item 6.8 from the March 6, 2024 meeting. It's the budget projections. It's essentially looking, for my interpretation, at the budget calculated from 2023 actuals to project 2024, not considering 25 to 28. I'll second it to bring to the floor so we can have some discussion, because this is odd. So,
Mr. Ray?
okay, so I'm discussing it. Essentially, with this item, was it included in the March, I don't see it in the March
It should
6,
have been in the March 6 meetings, my fault I didn't include it.
Council.
Forgot to attach it as late.
That's why I'm talking about something that nobody has.
And it will be brought back in further budget meetings.
Ray?
If I may ask, council has accepted the March 6, 2024 minutes as amended. However, can we now approve this as an amendment
Can
as
we
well?
finish with the first motion?
Would that not be what this motion is?
No, he's asking for it to be brought back to the next meeting.
As an item?
As an item, yes, and
So we
put
can
it in
discuss
as
it
an
and talk
item.
about it.
Sure.
Mr. Waddell?
Just folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that coming back for further discussion because when we receive it on the 6th for information, so that when we bring it back at a further meeting, I believe in April, that we actually have the budget of the line items that we want to discuss and everything that we want to discuss with.
Yes, but it is my fault, I forgot to attach the late item to the minutes.
But it is coming back for discussion
Yeah.
already. It's already, yeah.
Well, then there's
So
no
we're
problem
bringing
in voting in favor of it then if it's gonna come
Are we
back.
bringing it back twice then to talk about it?
I think we should bring it back as many times as possible.
The other question is then, do we want further information to further flush it out? Because they bring back those exact same numbers, it still doesn't flush out those categories of the 3,000, 2,000, whatever, numbers that you were concerned about, is kind of,
140,000 and 11,000.
yeah, like, if we're gonna bring it back, then we should be asking for more of a flush out of that and more of a breakdown, more detail, so it isn't just one big number, we can actually see what those individual items are that lead up to that number.
I second your motion on the fly.
Well, it's not really a motion on the fly, it's just part of the discussion saying that if we're gonna ask for this, this should be part of it, right? Otherwise, we're bringing back the exact same information we already have, that all three of us, or all four of us can open up our phones and look at right now.
Well, we can't because it's not in the minutes, it's not in the agenda, it's late item.
So,
Mr. Ray?
Councillor Whittle, are you requesting that these numbers be fleshed out in such a way where the budget lines are broken down more substantially for inspection?
I'm not requesting it, I'm just saying that, to make more
If
sense
they're
of what
gonna come
if they're
back.
gonna come back, they need to come back broke down. In all honesty, I'm happy with where those numbers are, and right now in the middle of budget season, I think it's kind of a waste of staff's time, but if we're gonna be looking at where we can cut and we wanna start, hacking and slashing and stuff blindly, we should at least have a breakdown of it to, better understand why that money was spent. That's all I'm getting at.
Mr. Wall?
I'm a little bit confused, because if you're so confident it was in the March 6th and we have these numbers already, well, and it's not hacking and slashing blindly if we already have them, if we're admitting that we have them,
But anyway,
right? If we have them, then we know what we're talking about. And if we don't have them, then we don't. So we're saying we have them, just bring them back again, that's what I want.
Can we bring it back with a breakdown? Mr. Ray?
that's kind of what I'm getting at, bringing it back without a breakdown is kind of,
Yeah, and that's why.
Got it, yeah.
So that's why I'm seconding Councillor Whittle's motion to bring it back with a breakdown.
So we're amending his motion
Mhm.
to bring it back with a breakdown.
That's
Sure.
a lot of-
Is that what we're-
Sorry?
That's a lot of hacking, because he wants to, Councilor Wall has a motion on the floor right now to bring it back.
Yeah.
And I'm just, as discussion, I'm saying that if we're gonna bring it back, it's worth having it more broke down. So if
Yes.
Councilor Wall would like to amend his motion, or if we can amend that motion, that we bring it back.
The numbers I'm talking about,
Can't hear Mike.
No.
the numbers,
Hello? We can't hear you.
Can I just like to, like, I would suggest that going through to specific line items that you could have a policy saying that, the village, for austerity, to help with the austerity, will not pay food for staff at meetings and for council members. I would recommend that you give direction to staff about how much you want to cut, what areas you want to, if you're looking at, and recommendations that staff could give you. If you guys say want to cut 200,000 or 300,000 off the budget, give it to staff to recommend, or you set up a target of what you want cut from this budget with austerity. You say that if you're going to say, if you're going to, you're not going to make this cut if you're looking at $100,000 or 100 or 200. You're not going to make it by cutting out food. And efficiencies for photocopying and all that. You're spending money on bylaw or on your bylaw services. You can maybe do, you're putting, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but say it's around 130,000 that you're putting monies into for the tourism and for the library. Those are monies that you can cut back. So you give it to staff with direction what areas you want to cut. And if there's efficiencies you want to cut, and give a direction that way. Doing it by line item, and if you guys decide to go by line item, that your staff then, your role is to give direction to staff on what areas you want to cut. And then if you're not happy with them after that, then you've got other recourses. If you're going to say that you want a 10 or 15% cut without any cutback in services or staff, doing it by cutting back food and this and that and travel is simply not going to happen. So there's my 2 cents. So if you want a budget, and quite frankly, you buy what your choices were by signing the collective agreement that you signed, and fair enough. And by the addition of the staff, that's 165,000 right there, guys. You're not going to find 165,000 unless you want to cut back some services. So my recommendation is to give scenarios to staff of how to cut the budget.
So to deal with the motion on the floor, essentially, the spirit would be that the public has not been able to inspect these numbers. Therefore, the understanding is it should be brought forward because we have not been able to move these line items forward in a public meeting. Therefore, my understanding is that the motion is to request that these numbers as presented in late item 6.8 on the March 6th, 2024 meeting be brought forward at the next moment of public meeting, next public council meeting. And that's to reiterate the member's motion.
Okay. More discussion? All in favor? Bringing it back, all opposed?
Have my opposed noted, please?
Mr. Rayo?
Since we're still within the receiving this financial plan for discussion and information, let's essentially, I therefore, taking in advice from Mr. McPhail, I put the motion on the floor to direct staff to produce a budget in line with all that's been presented, such that taxes only increase in 2024 to 5% without reducing
By 5%, not to 5%.
by 5%.
Bring it down to a 15% increase overall.
Well, we're sitting at 3.8 for residential. With 20%, it's 4.58. So absolutely, I don't want 5%. Anyways, what I'm getting at is to direct staff to, as this 2024-2028 financial plan has been presented, to have it such that the 2024 tax increase be 5%, and then rejig the numbers and see the potential back trimmings that can happen without reducing services like the library and the museum, which are essential services to our community, especially the firewall as well. But it's looking at the extraneous expenses that are happening within administration and operations.
Mr. Wall?
That needs a second.
Were you seconding?
Yeah.
Seconding the motion, okay. Mr. Woodall?
Alright, so, just so I understand, you're asking staff to only do look at only a 5% increase this year.
Mhm.
So, just for clarification, and Mr. McPhail, please correct me if I'm wrong. When we first got our numbers on the 6th, when we were running at basically at $260 roughly $1,000 over, that was looking at a 15% increase, same as what we did last year. So staying with that same 15% increase, still put us $200,000 in the hole. Your recommendations are on page 16 of our agendas that recommend where we can save essentially the money that we went over this year compared to last year. Is it even financially feasible to even look at a tax increase of only 5% and still be able to hit a sustainable target of keeping the village operational by 2028? That, and I understand we do need to cut, but we still need to cut even with a 15%, potential 15% or 10% increase, we still need to cut to get on track. And I think if we look at something as low as a 5% increase, even with implementing the recommendations on page 16, the 3 recommendations that are there, which I know that's a whole nother discussion, but is that even financially possible?
You would be, if you're going to, the next reality, the way that Poos has done it for the last 10, 15 years, is to use the PRA monies for operating.
Which puts us offside.
And which puts you offside on your agreement with the ministry. It jeopardizes the PRA monies. The reality is, the reality is that if you're going to cut back, there's not the only way you're going to be able to cut back. There is not a lot of fat per se. What you do if you're going to cut back is cut back the services that you're running, i.e. bylaw, how much you give in grants, your staffing, cut back your grants. Because if you're looking at, say you're operating your year over year, your operating revenue, say, will be around 2.4 million, say. And that is including, that will be including your, I'm going by the top of my head. I don't have the exact numbers, but it will be close, say 2.4 millions of what you draw in for operating revenues. $1.1 million of that is wages. Then there's another 200,000 in contract services that you provide, i.e. through the tourist or through the museum, through the library, the bylaw services. So the reality is you only have a staff of 10, 11 people, which works out to be $1 million. Your options are, as I put in the report, reduce staffing. And you can go offside on your PRA monies. You won't be in a deficit, but you'll be offside for the PRA agreement. I'm done.
Well,
I think we should be reducing our expenditures on contracted out services to organizations like Urban Systems. They're doing bylaws, they're doing minutes, they're doing a bunch of things that we have.
They're not doing minutes. And they don't do bylaws.
At the last meeting on the 6th, he said that they were.
Pardon me, they do not do the minutes. They've never done minutes.
Okay.
I don't know where you got that from, but they've never done minutes. They've done our DVP bylaw.
I think
Development
that
procedures, that's it.
we're paying staff to perform these tasks in-house, and I would like to make sure that our staff that we're paying to do it are doing it instead of it being contracted out. I think that's an easy place for us to have.
I think it just said that the Urban Systems were contracted with it for the OCP, for a specific contract. It was leaded and passed by council. What other areas are you talking about?
What other areas am I talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get, because there's no
And
any.
March 6th meeting, with the numbers that were presented, which council who just like 5 minutes ago voted against making public, is where I'm getting those numbers from.
Point of order, where did we vote against making minutes or numbers not public?
I asked for them to be put in the late item, which is not included in the minutes, to be put on the next agenda so we could discuss it, and council voted opposed to making those numbers public at the next meeting.
Council did not vote opposed, it was a tied vote which goes in the affirmative, so they are
No,
being.
it's defeated.
It's defeated.
But are they not publicly available on our website right now?
They will be as soon as, no, because I forgot to attach them, I've already said that, I admitted to making a mistake.
Yeah,
If
so
you'd like,
it's
I
not
made
that
a
they're not
mistake.
publicly available, it's just they haven't been published yet, so.
and they
So
were.
if you make an amendment to the adoption of the minutes with the addition of the late item of 6.8, then they will be there.
My apologies.
Have we made that recommendation?
No, nobody's made that yet.
You wanna make that?
I'll make the recommendation that.
Are we finished with this part first?
We're on 6.1, so.
Yeah, still on discussion.
Well, are we not discussing asking staff to review the numbers, directing staff to review the numbers such that the tax increase for 24 is 5%?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's where we're at.
Was that a motion?
Yes,
previously
Was
by
there a second?
Councillor Rattle and
Okay.
Councillor Wall.
So is it an all in favor vote?
Sure.
All in favor? All opposed?
You want your opposition vote noted?
Yes, I think 5% is unsustainable.
Councillor Johnston, do you want your opposed?
All right, is that an end of discussion? Or did we wanna make that?
Well, that item's done, so I'll make the motion that the late item presented on the March 6th meeting be added to the minutes for this meeting. Or added to the minutes for the March 6th meeting.
Second. Mr. Rabel, all in favor? Unanimous, carried. 6.2 recommendation.
Oh, no, we still have to vote on 6.1 to receive this for information.
Oh,
I'll make the recommendation that council receives the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for discussion
You
and
already did that.
information. Yeah,
You
but
already did that.
we never voted on if we're receiving it for
We've been
information.
living in it this whole time.
We're still on that motion, are we not?
Okay, yes.
I'll second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Of receiving for information?
Yeah, for information and discussion.
Just information.
Just information and discussion. All opposed?
Noted.
Like
Noted,
proposed
please, this is
noted?
too high, 20% is too high.
Well, it's just information, you've
Just
already been
information,
discussing it.
discussion.
There's no you're not deciding tonight. This
Well,
is just,
even for information, I can't even entertain the fact that we're discussing a 20% tax.
well, you've already been discussing it.
Well, then why are we doing this?
Recommendation 6.2.
The council receives the report for a new command truck for the fire department for consideration and information.
Discussion.
Alrighty, so, guess I'll start on this one. So Chief DeVoe, and I sat down to discuss this a while back. So a couple of the issues is there's some safety concerns, there's a report there in front of you guys. But a couple of concerns, and what they're looking for is they're looking to potentially add another truck to the fleet, like another pickup truck to the fleet. Because currently right now we have the chief's buggy that the chief has, or the duty officer has. And currently right now firefighters are using their personal vehicles after fires to transport stuff back and forth. Which again, it's noted in the report here, increases the risk of cancer. Now they're taking that home to their wives and their children and everything else. So now it's increasing that for their family. The other portion of that is that when they're responding to medical calls, they're taking big $750,000 to $1 million trucks to go respond to helping Granny get on a stretcher with the BC ambulance or respond to medical calls with that big truck. Problem with the big truck is your limited capacity for medical equipment as well as your fire gear. So a pickup is better suited. So then the advantages to that is it's less fuel for running a pickup truck. The other part of that is less wear and tear on the big trucks, so that's less maintenance, because in order to do maintenance on those big trucks, we have to have specially certified mechanics to actually do any kind of maintenance on them. Once they hit so many hours, they require so much maintenance. So it reduces the overall maintenance costs on our big trucks, which therefore prolongs their lifespan and usability. And then reduces the risk of having damage to that, because especially in the wintertime, having those big trucks ripping down the highway to go to a medical call and something happens to that big truck, now we've lost it. We lose a pickup truck, that's an easier replacement. So that's one of the reasons why this is coming forward. Now I do believe that the chief does have some grant money available to put into this truck. Part of it as well is also to address safety concerns for our firefighters, because even with the digital radio system that's in the area, there's still some dead spots. And the plan for this truck, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, is to put an onboard radio repeater into it. So what happens is when one of the firefighters is on their handheld and they call out, this truck will actually pick up that transmission and transmit it stronger back out to the digital towers, which will then send it out to the rest of the firefighters and everybody else in fire dispatch, so that everybody knows what's going on, and that can mean the difference between a firefighter living and dying, right? Guys in a fire has a weak signal, gets trapped, nobody can hear that he's trapped and he's inside there, versus having this truck parked outside on scene that's going to take that signal, a weaker signal, and rebroadcast it. So there's advantage to that. And then the other one that there's a possibility of is there's potentially the possibility of some revenue and cost recovery for this as well, especially within the wildfire season, because as we send out some of our larger trucks to wildfires and we get money back on that, when we're doing, say, crew changes, we're sending the big fire trucks driving all the way back and all the way back again with another crew, where we could leave the fire truck potentially down there and have crews swap out in one of the smaller trucks, so now that reduces the kilometers on the big truck as well. And depending on the configuration of how the department sets up this truck, and I believe with the configuration that they're going to put in it, it could potentially be used for will be able to be used for wildland fire, but could potentially be contracted to BC Wildfire if needed as well, and will meet their requirements. If I got all that right.
Mr. Wall.
I have no opposition to helping our fire department in purchasing another command truck. I'm just curious if we've looked at other communities and other trucks that have purchased to see if they're in that $170,000 range, same as what we're expecting here.
The contractor would like to go.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. McPhail.
Oh, thank you.
Have a good night.
I'm just curious if we have looked at other command trucks in comparable fire departments to see if they're around that same cost range.
And to my understanding, I believe the chief has, he's looked at, I believe, Charlie Lake, Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, so the surrounding areas. And this has actually been a need that's been with the fire department for some time, because even when I was with the fire department back in 2014, 2015, we had this issue, and multiple times I used my own personal truck to haul back hoses, or I got my truck with turnout gear. So he has looked at other options, and I do believe that the equipment between this truck and the existing truck, a lot of that fire equipment will be interchangeable. So he'll have the option to, depending on what the needs are, be able to change stuff around in the back of that truck to meet whatever particular need we have for that.
Oh, and, my question was more so not on whether other fire departments have these. I really think it's important for us to get one, for all of the reasons you mentioned. I'm just curious if other municipalities, their fire departments have spent in the same cost range between $150,000 and $170,000 for the truck.
That's relatively cheap, in all honesty. Wearing one of my other hats, I've had the privilege or pleasure, we'll call it, of outfitting 3 other command units, and equipped and ready to go, we're tipping the scales around 200,000.
Okay.
So with the numbers that the chief has, and I do believe there is some grant money that covers some of this, really these numbers are fairly decent from what I've seen and that kind of stuff. So I know that some of the equipment's covered by a grant, is it not, that you're looking at potentially putting into this truck?
So the speed unit that we're going to throw into this truck that I have now, that was funded by grant money. The other truck I haven't gone out after any grants for yet, so it's kind of taking itself from that one for this one per se. It has directly right now no to the new truck.
Okay. Yeah, so, but the stuff you have for this truck will fit into the new truck that you're looking at. So we potentially already own equipment to go into it.
Mr. Ritter?
So it sounds like it's gonna save the existing trucks that are already being utilized. It's not gonna contaminate people and their families, which is massive. And fixing radio dead spots, potentially reducing personal vehicle use, and that there's a truck left at the fire hall to respond to things if the trucks are elsewhere. So taking into account the saving existing trucks and the benefits it provides, would that offset the increased operational costs of the gas and the repairs in regards to this vehicle? Like, would this help fill a void, or would the operation of the fire hall increase the operating cost?
I'd have to look to staff for that one.
I can see it could, in the long run, probably cheaper. Just, if we blow a tire on that truck, it's, $600-700, probably make the product tag better. Versus if I blow a tire on my truck, it's $300. Yeah, there'd be a little bit of fuel, just the other stuff we want to do with it. However, costs of running down the road, so call, cheaper.
Mr. Wall, I have a question for our CAO or CFO, whichever one can answer it. Is the financial implication of this included in the budget we were just discussing? Okay.
Capital purchase.
Okay.
But I'm not looking for a motion tonight.
It's just discussion and consideration.
Yes. We'll bring it back with the rest of the budget.
Could we make a motion?
Let's do it.
For free.
Just a quick question, to the chief, if you can. Was there time considerations for being able to get the radio equipment and everything in and serviceable this year? Because I know with BC wildfire ramping up and the availability of getting into radio places is booking up pretty tight. So what are you looking at from your end on that, potentially?
The last time I spoke with the contractor, you're probably looking at a time frame of 2 to 3 months. That's been a month ago that I talked to them, so I know they're picking up their business is picking up for them as well. Because of the cost of the repeater, it's only one supplier that does that for the type of radios. So that's why we can't go here, big prices of repeaters. They're the only supplier for it. But yeah, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 months for all the equipment and so.
Mr. Wall, considering this is already budgeted for, which is awesome, it sounds like we really need it. And there's a time constraint because this summer is probably going to be a wild one. I would like to put the motion on the floor that we approve the purchase of the truck.
I'll second that.
Discussion. Mr. Ritter?
Just for simple clarification, it's 150,000 to 170,000 for the truck. Is that including the equipment that goes inside? Oh, as well.
That's everything.
Oh, okay. It's not just a truck, it's a whole fitted out.
Yeah, ready to roll.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Unanimous and carried. 6.3 recommendation.
The council received the concept drawings and quote for the park upgrades next to the office for information and discussion. There's always discussion with us.
Says information.
For a second?
Sure.
When isn't there discussion with this group?
There's no
We can have a discussion, no discussion.
This really is only for information right now at this point in time.
What are we doing? Pick a park? Mr. Ray?
That's actually a good one. So I am just so surprised at what things cost now to build a park. My goodness. Is there just some quick background on? Is it just everything is so darn expensive? Is it like special materials or special plastics or something that's costing this much? Because my goodness, I know there has to.
Playground equipment is expensive.
Because it's only made by so many companies and it's all the safety compliance piece.
They were made out of sticks.
I remember a hot metal slide that was just,
Well, the
slip.
slivers you pull out of your hands.
Yeah.
And this is making it accessible.
Yes, which is part of the accessibility committee piece.
Mr. Woodall?
Ms. Stokes, some of these costs, for whatever concept council looks at down the road, some of this is covered by grants and accessibility money, or how is this
There will
being
be
funded?
several grants that we can apply for once council decides which project they're gonna go ahead with.
No.
But that's not to be decided tonight.
And then that'll also, and then any of these parks will be accessible, like fully accessible to persons in wheelchairs with special needs, that kind of stuff.
Mr. Wall?
Bouncing from my future report, would there be any areas on any of these sites that would be suitable for a sculpture? Not funded by taxpayer money?
These are playgrounds, you want a sculpture in the playground?
Well,
Correct.
playgrounds seem like they only
Actually-
take up a little bit of the land.
This is for this park over here.
right beside us.
Only for this park over here.
Yeah, it seems like there's lots of like grass space around too.
But that's a kid's park, that's so they can play and run and.
I thought you were gonna bring up your paint rock.
Paint rock, yeah. I'm gonna put it right
It's
here.
entirely up to council, they can decide, just not at this time, because we don't know what concept we're going with.
That's fair.
But you could, if you wanted to, yes, work it into it.
I'm curious what kind of statue.
That was my question, thanks.
It's got sharp edges.
It's gonna be up to us. Statue will be up to us.
Mr. Ray?
In regards to grants and funding opportunities for a park, what would the timeline look like for such a thing? When would some of those deadlines be? What are the regular cycles for grants that would be associated with projects like this?
So I know there's some grants coming up that expire at the end of October. So depending on how quickly council makes a decision, which plan, then once you have that, then we would put a motion forward to apply for any and all grants. If we could, we might have to do, specific motions for specific grants. But there is 2 or 3 out there that I've been looking at regarding the park. This is not a build it this year park. This will be built over a couple of years.
Mr. Rabel?
When this returns, would we be able to get a cost on how much the consultation was to
It's right
prepare
there.
this document? Where is it, sorry?
Sorry, the consultation, what
The consultation to produce this document, to produce these renderings.
Council approved a $25,000 budget line item last year.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Don't look like it. Move on to correspondence.
All in favor of receiving
Oh, yeah. All in favor of receiving for information? All unanimous. Correspondence. Anything in correspondence that wants to be brought forward? Mr. Ray?
Well, for 7.3, the council receives a letter of support for Bill 34 from Hudson's Hope as information.
Discussion.
Seconded.
Yes. Mr. Whittle, discussion? Mr. Whittle?
Building upon previous letters of support that this body has issued in regards to Bill 34, the Restricting of Public Consumption of Illegal Substances Act, we have submitted quite a few letters, for example being City of Dawson Creek, City of Fort St. John. There were a few pieces for the NCLGA. I'm curious as to if council wants to also supply a letter of support for this, for Hudson Hope in regards to Bill 34.
I say sure, why not? You can send
It
the
wasn't a
same.
motion.
That was an emotion.
It wasn't a motion.
Okay, therefore I put the motion on the floor that the village of Pooskoopi send a letter of support to Hudson's Hope in regards to support for Bill 34.
Seconder? Mr. Wall? Discussion?
Since we've sent so many of these off already, I don't know why we don't just write our own. Like, it was probably the 5th or 6th one we've gotten in the last 2 months.
Mr. Ray?
We could probably use the base that we already have for Dawson Creek and Fort St. John as a template, because it speaks to the damage that the public consumption of illegal substances does in our community.
So letters of support have not been for Bill 34.
The one for Fort St. John, was written
The
about
one was for criminal activity, not consumption. It was for criminal activity.
Okay. Thank you.
And so was the one for, there was another one about criminal activity too that was sent out for support.
More discussion?
It's in the same spirit, so
Yes.
I appreciate the clarification.
So all in favor of staff sending a letter to, in support of Bill 34?
I'll say
All
what
in
I said last
favor? All opposed? None? Unanimous and carried. Any more discussion on correspondence? Do we need a motion to receive the rest as information? Or just move on? We're down to administration reports, CAO report.
I just have a couple of things to add, just so everybody knows. There is a fire ban effective March 28th for Category 2 and Category 3 fires. We posted on Facebook and our website. The lagoon grant can now be made public as of yesterday.
Okay.
Okay, so, and just for clarification, it was $2.331,724.
Awesome.
Okay,
Is that included in the budget?
that's already in, Mr. McPhail did state that it was already in there. I already told you about the temporary boundaries. Strat plan. There was a question last time about if anybody asked about curb and gutters. So I went back to Urban Systems and not in the strat plan, there was no public consultation for strat plan, that's council and staff. But in the OCP, they went back on the engagement feedback and there was 3 or 4 people that mentioned getting rid of the ditches and their main concern was flooding. Nobody said anything about curb and gutters, but they do say that the strat plan does cover it, it's just not specific curb and gutter, it states infrastructure, and that would cover everything. If you get too specific, yeah.
Mr. Wall.
Could we include as part of that strat plan, instead of saying curb and gutter, could we say drainage upgrades?
Well, it's storm water
Stormwater.
upgrades. encompasses everything.
Oh, so it doesn't just say infrastructure, it says stormwater upgrades?
I believe it says stormwater, but I can double check.
I would just like it mentioned, something to do with, it doesn't need to be specifically curb and gutter, it's just.
No, I believe it says stormwater, but I will double check.
Thank you.
It mentions improving stormwater system, there. I wrote it down, okay.
That's good for me.
And that's all I have.
Right. Action items. 8.2. Mr. Rail.
Sorry, I just wanted to emphasize that it's a moment of celebration for $2.3 million that is funding the final repairs to the lagoon, and that is a significant moment. That's years and years and years of stuff that we can finally put to rest and have that fixed up. And the other piece being the $50,000 grant regarding economic development, which is also a moment for celebration. So I think we should take a moment to reflect on that and appreciate that that's been able to come forth with a lot of hard work in the background to get that move forward. So I want to thank council for that. I want to thank staff for that. I want to thank the suppliers of the funds for that, and that we can move that forward. I'm very excited for that.
8.2 action items. Anybody want to discuss anything on the action items? Mr. Rabel.
I want to thank Mrs. Stokes and staff for moving forward with the alcohol policy. I didn't have a chance to review it, but you know, that's a work in progress. So I wanted to thank staff for that as well.
Any more discussion on the action items? Okay, let's move on to capital and special projects. 8.3. Oh,
Sorry, not total budget's done.
I do apologize. The draft strategic plan has been, you know, given to council. Is there a timeline? Is there a deadline to when recommended changes is for the strat?
Been and done.
For the strat plan.
They're gonna redo it,
Mm.
and then it's going to be circulated to council.
Okay.
Any more on the capital projects? No? Move on to canceled calendars. Oh, Mr. Will. When are you away?
So I'm actually away now April 2nd to April 22nd for work purposes, but I will be able to attend council meetings via Zoom for the 3rd and the 17th, or if any other special meetings are needed in the evenings, I'm available. And then, no, we don't have May's yet, so I won't be here in May either for some time. I'll email you those dates. It'll be gone in May because I won't be here for the council meetings in April. But I'm gone in May. And that's all I got. Oh, actually, the only, yeah, no, that's it. I'm good for now.
Anything else on the council calendars?
I know we're not in May yet, but the museum's grand opening is going to be May 11th. I would just like that for when the May one is out, just so we can remember that they're going to be doing their shindig in the street with the bikes and the kids and the garage sale and pancake breakfast and whatnot. So.
All right, we'll move on to reports. Councillor Johnston report. I don't have much to report. The only thing I've attended is Mr. Michel's budget seminar, a little breakdown of numbers so we understood how everything was put in. And that's about all I have to report. Councillor Rabel.
Okay. I attended the Legion Schnitzel Night, got to talk with some folks, hear the goings on in the community. Really good to see that. Good to see another absolutely delicious schnitzel night. I attended a schnitzel? Did I say it weird?
No. You just got me thinking about schnitzel now.
Oh, it's really good
hungry
stuff.
too.
They do such a good job at it, and the sauerkraut's absolutely awesome. Anyways, I also attended a seniors dinner just to also hear from folks. Good discussion. I did not attend the budget workshop because of the confusion of it being canceled publicly, that the meeting for the budget was canceled publicly, and then that budget workshop was being held at the same time. Therefore, because of the confusion and public information available to folks, I did not attend that workshop. I did have a chance to meet with the library budget or library board in regard, well, not the library board wholly, but essentially talk with folks at the library to understand what's going on at the library and all the fun things they do. Just to provide some context to council in a public forum, essentially on March 16th, 2017, that the Pouce Library Board did motion to create a contingency fund of $25,000 that should be taken into consideration of their proposed budget, that they are to keep $25,000 aside for dissolution, if ever need be, heaven forbid. That annual library grants received are the per capita operating grant based on population, the resource sharing grant regarding interlibrary loan services, the BC One Card grant in regards to active patrons between different libraries with a library card, the literacy and equity grant that expansion of library collections, programs and services to promote lifelong learning and literacy. So essentially those are the 4 standard grants that they do have to apply for, and they're not totally guaranteed, but they're kind of the standard 4. Those are quite regular. The thing I'd like to draw council's attention to is the library enhancement grant. Essentially, the Pouce Coupe Public Library in March 2023 received a sum of approximately $56,000, and then another one in June 2023 of approximately $35,000 to make a 2023 total of approximately $92,000. The thing to take into consideration with this enhancement grant for the library is that it is for the expansion of library services and is explicitly not meant to replace municipal funding sources or other funding sources, and it's to focus on capital investments versus operational investments. And so I simply wanted to bring attention to that, as there's been a tad of confusion around that this one-time grant, just as we received the $813,000 one-time grant for vibrant communities from the province, it's to be taken into consideration that this is a one-time grant, that this was dispersed in 2023, and that will not exist in 2024, as it was a one-time deal. And that council should take that into consideration when moving forward the budget. So I wanted to bring that to council's attention, and then just simply the way the budget was presented, we can go into more detail about that as it comes forward to council, but that is what I was able to learn from the library folks in their efforts. And of course the board will work on a plan for the utilization of those capital funds over the next 3 years, which is a requirement, and then they have to report on it, another requirement, but that's a capital investment piece versus the operation piece is what the Village of Pouce Coupe helps supplement. That's it.
That's it? All right. Councillor Wall.
Sorry in advance, it's a bit of a long one. So I went to the Schnitzel night on March 8th at the Legion. I had great conversations with a bunch of people there. It was a full house. I'm happy to see so many people supporting our Legion. Like, seriously, it was a full house. It was perfect. It couldn't have been better. The dates for the gun show at the Eventive have been finalized Saturday, April 6th and Sunday the 7th. I hope to see lots of collectors and hunters there. It's going to be pretty good. It's part of the tourism. The big one now is the museum. So I went to the museum on March 7th for their board meeting. And at our last council meeting on the March 6th, the day before, I know there were questions about the $17,000 budget that the museum provided for the summer students. That number there is just above minimum wage. It's around the $20 an hour mark, and minimum wage right now is, well, next week it's going to $17.45. So, but that $17,000 per summer student includes the EI, the CPP, the WCB, and the payroll taxes. All of the employer paid contributions are in there as well. So I know that was a conversation that we had. They have applied for federal grant, but they have yet to hear whether they'll receive it, because they can't finalize anything until we approve it. So that deadline is April 1st. So one of their summer students has agreed to come back from last year as well. The curator, they would like to let her know whether or not she can come back, because they can't say yes or no unless they have the money. So in conversation with the museum after board meeting, we came to a bit of an agreement that if the budget were to be passed here and they got the grant, they would use the grant money and not use that money that we gave to pay for that summer student. They'd give it back. So I would like to make the motion that we approve their budget for the museum prior to the deadline of April 1st, because they have to open on May 11th and they have to hire people.
It hasn't been presented yet,
Their budget was presented on March 6th.
but you guys didn't discuss it, did you?
Yes, we did.
There was no discussion on the actual budget, the museum's budget. We discussed everything else, but we didn't actually talk about the museums.
We did discuss the museum budget. I discussed the museum budget. I asked a bunch of questions about it at the meeting the next day.
There wasn't an in-depth conversation, I guess. Rephrase that, yeah.
Is someone seconding it?
Well, I'm asking for clarification. So to clarify, sorry, you're saying that the museum is in a time crunch because the budgetary process that council is taking on has basically, they've lapsed a grant already. Now they're about to lapse another grant. Can you provide more context on this?
Yeah, so basically what it is they open on May 11th. They open the second week of May every year. They do their pancake breakfast, all of these things. Now, there's only one curator, and they require help from the summer students that they hire. To enable hiring the summer students prior to their grand opening, they need some sort of confirmation that they're going to receive some sort of money. It could be from the federal government, but if a budget isn't approved, they're not going to get it, because they don't have an approved budget.
Mr. Widow?
So correct me if I'm wrong though, because like I know we had a brief discussion on it, but they had put back, I think they had given us 3 different scenarios for funding. And to my understanding, we have not as a council had a discussion about which scenario we wanted to explore. And I totally appreciate, I totally get the fact that, you know, they need approval. So with this, are they looking, because there's 2 parts of it, and just work with me here for a sec. So they need approval that they're gonna at least get 1 summer student is what they would need in order to hire that student to move forward, or do they need their entire budget approved?
I would like, so what I would
A
suggest.
letter of intent saying that they are gonna get money, we just don't know how much yet.
What I would like to do, yeah, you're right, I phrased my motion incorrectly. So, there were 3 options. 2 were 7 days a week option, and 1 was a 5-day-a-week option. I would like to approve the 5-day-a-week option so that the curator can hire the 1 summer student. It's the cheapest of the 3 options.
Ms. Stokes?
So we go through this every year with the museum. They know when our budgets go forward. We've never had to pre-approve before.
It's a federal.
Those around the grant have changed in the last couple of
I
years.
know, we're still waiting to hear too, but they'll find out before May 1st.
They can't ask about it until they have an approved budget, and that
They
deadline.
already applied for the grant.
They've applied for it, but they won't get it unless they have an approved budget by the federal deadline, which is April 1st. That's why they didn't get it last year.
They did it last year.
The scenario of the 5 days a week is the one that is currently in the proposed budget.
It is, eh?
It is the cheapest of the 3 options that were provided.
Yes.
So, quick question, so if we were to, you know, approve option number 3, pre-approve option number 3 for the budget, which is worked into the current budget numbers that we've had looked at, would that still be something to look at, that if they did receive that grant, then they just wouldn't utilize that entire grant amount that we granted them essentially. It was what we're-
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what he had
That's
said.
correct.
Yeah.
So if they did end up receiving the grant, they would use that money, not our money.
Yeah, but they need approval of one of these options so that they can move forward to see even if they even get the grant to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, gotta put the cart before the horse so they can actually get the horse to pull the cart.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah, one of those. It's just guaranteeing that they will have the money for a summer student, be it from the federal government or from us. Ideally, they'll get the grant and it'll be from the feds.
Still need a second there.
I know, I was gonna get to that, but he has another.
Alright, well, I second it so that we can discuss it, so we're following Robert's rules here.
Yes, Mr. Red.
So essentially, scenario 1 is 3 employees, 7 days a week. Scenario 2 is 3 employees, 7 days a week with no federal funding. And then scenario 3 is 2 employees, 5 days a week, no federal funding. Are you able to provide clarification on which scenario? you're
Number 3.
discussing? 2 employees, 5 days a week,
5 days a week option,
for $63,705.40, assuming no federal funding?
assuming no federal funding. But if they get the federal funding, then they will use the federal funding instead of ours.
And option 3 is what we have
In our
in
budget.
our budget right now.
So that number could be less, but if we don't approve it sometime in the near future, it's a guarantee that we're gonna be paying for it instead of the money coming from the feds. Right?
Mr. Rick.
So at the end of the day, it's the 63,000 less the 17,000 for the employee?
It's the 63,000. If they get the federal funding for the summer students, they will use the grant money instead of the $17,000 per student for the 2 students option, so they're open 5 days a week.
Yes.
I believe the grant money is about 50% of the,
Of the wage?
yeah, roughly. I'm not sure on theirs, but.
So,
We have a motion on the floor.
What do you want
I
to
just
say?
wanna amend your, so, I just wanna, cause your motion on right now is to approve funding, but I would, if we could amend the motion to approve option 3 with the understanding that I actually have it in the motion that if they receive grant funding, that they will carry over those funds for next year's operations. I just wanna, cause like, there's no point giving them money, then they give us a check back, they just
That's-
carry it over for next year's
that's-
operations.
that's
I just
what I
wanted, I just wanted to make,
Carry it forward.
it'll be carried forward, yeah, I just wanna make sure we're covered on that if we.
I believe that's how it was proposed in option 3 in the budget that presented.
Just wanna make sure that's in our, that we're covered there. As much as I like the museum, I hate to give them $62,000 and they're like, oh, well, you didn't say,
Yeah.
right? I just wanna,
They're usually pretty good.
oh, I know, I'm just,
Yeah, they will carry it forward.
yeah, less is really good.
Yes, Mr. Red.
just clarification to the CFO's point, in regards to the grant, if it's 50% of the wage and it's about 17,000, then that's about 8 or so thousand, let's say 8.5. So it would be 63,000 less, approximately 8.5. Am I correct in that understanding?
Theirs might be more though, I'm not 100%
Okay.
sure.
There were the 2 grants, they're both federally funded. The one is through the Museums Association of Canada, and the other one was through
Government. Same when we apply for summer students.
the summer students.
Yeah.
All the motions out.
I guess it's called a vote with the amended motion. Mr. Woodall threw in there, approving the budget. Number 3, all in favor? All opposed? There's no opposed.
Well, hopefully that gives them what they need to go after that grant. You know,
Okay, continuing. Saturday, May 11th, we have museum's grand opening. There'll be pancake breakfast, a car show. They're having the cruisers come out. It's going to be a good thing. Possibly garage sale. I'm hoping they do. Their AGM will be on Thursday, April 4th. Members of the Museum Association and the public are encouraged to come or sign up. They're always looking for volunteers or board members. They're really good group. Their next regular meeting after that will be on May 2nd. I attended the senior supper. Turns out you don't have to be a senior to attend. I didn't know that. I was told, I saw it on Facebook, and I wonder if we can go. So we did. The supper happens to be every 3rd Friday of the month, and it is a good meal. I don't know. It is, you get heaping amounts of potatoes, you serve yourself, there's ham, gravy, roast beef. It was $20, well worth it if you
are available on the third Friday of the month for the senior supper, which is awesome. Met with artist Carl Matson. He, myself, and Executive Director Malkinson of the Southeast Art Society toured his property and his workshop there on sculptures that he's doing for the communities of Narmada and Castlegar. Oh, Ms. Stokes, you don't have to write all this down, I'll email it to you.
Okay.
I'm reading it off my phone, so. So, he walked us through a portfolio, showed us some of his current projects, we discussed grant opportunities. He's looking at doing approximately $20,000 project that is very likely to be grant funded. If it's not grant funded, I said I really wouldn't be interested in it, but if he wants to do something that he's found a grant for and wants to do it, I'm more than happy to present that to council. And I asked that once he comes up with some plans, and that's why I asked for the map of village-owned properties and whatnot, that he could maybe do a delegation to the village. It is spectacular work he's doing. I don't know if you guys know, but he did the guy in the traffic circle in Dawson.
Yeah.
And that was a $5,000 project, so what does he plan on doing for 20? So that's pretty impressive. He does have a website, I'll link that in my thing. And it's impressive. I really hope that it goes through. On Thursday, March 19th, I met with the Vice President of Northern Lights College Student Council regarding cultural events for the Filipino community they might want to do at our Canada Day celebrations.
Wow.
That came out of the blue.
Wow.
That was just yesterday.
Wow.
So I'm looking forward to meeting with them, hopefully in the next couple of weeks for the next meeting to see what types of things they're interested in doing. I'm not really sure at this moment, but I said, yeah, if you want to do a thing, I don't see why it can hurt. There will be a town hall hosted at the Legion, branch number 34 here in Pouce, by Mike Bernier on April 18th. He wants to hear the concerns people in Pouce have regarding provincial issues, because there's been a lot of, it's funny because this came up in conversation, we've sent out enough letters of support for Bill 34 that it's maybe to some people's mind. So that's happening April 18th at the Legion. I believe it's 7 p.m. Also, the last one here is it's been announced the Elgin Medical Clinic in Dawson is closing, and we have,
Oh, I didn't get it.
yeah, that was just yesterday or Monday, maybe. The Elgin Medical Clinic in Dawson is closing. And we have a lot of residents here that family doctors are the Elgin Medical Clinic. So I would like us to write a letter to Adrian Dix, the PRD, and Northern Health about what are the next steps here? How can we replace these family doctors? Because there's already enough people that don't have a family doctor.
That's right.
If I may, essentially, and this is why I believe that the South Peace Division of Family Practice would be valuable to have as a delegation to council, because they're working on a plan, and I've seen their presentation elsewhere. I don't want to speak for them because I wish for them to present, but my understanding of what they're attempting to do is potentially work with communities to consolidate services at a clinic like this, and then be able to allow people to access medical services without having to have a family doctor, to help refine how people access services. And that's why we had initially supported, and that's why we support the Division of Family Practice as per our letter of support for the MLA's motion, essentially. Anyways, long and the short is, that's why I believe the Division of Family Practice should come present to this body, so that we can get more information on projects like this, and how they're helping to make more efficient access to medical services in our communities.
Has the motion been made to invite the Southeast Division of Family Practice to present to us?
Yes.
Okay.
And they contacted me, they're trying to figure out a date.
So
Thank you.
I do have the motion on the floor to write a letter to Minister Dix.
Hasn't been seconded yet.
Hasn't been seconded. Nobody wants to do it. Regarding future steps on how we
Second, for discussion.
One second.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea, but I think we should hold off until after we've had our presentation from the Division of Family Practice, just because that might actually answer some of the questions, and especially with budget time and where we're at right now, that's just another thing for staff to deal with. But I think, it's something we look at, put it on the back burner until we get that presentation, because then we can have probably construct a more pointed letter that works in conjunction with them.
Could we add it as like an action item until after they are presented to us? Have presented to us?
I've got no issue with that.
Not that?
I would say,
Mr. Allen?
speaking to Councillor Widow's point, it's a presentation that you'll be rather impressed and surprised with. I don't mean to speak for a member, but essentially I was extremely impressed with what they're attempting to do. And they'll need support from our communities. So I think we should hear them out first before we act on something at this time.
I think that's what Councilor Woodall was saying.
You just said it nicer than I did. Yeah.
So all in favor of sending the letter?
You win.
All opposed, unanimous.
Okay. I think that is my report.
Councillor Woodall.
Okay, we got a few more minutes. So yeah, this last week I had a chance to pour through the budget numbers a little bit more, look at them a little bit more, and refine my abilities to read spreadsheets. And yeah, so I went through that. I attended the workshop last Wednesday as well, which was kind of nice because I was able to get some clarification on stuff that were really simple answers on stuff. And get a better understanding of the budget sheets, because I'm not a financial guy that deals with budgets on a daily basis. So yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it, I guess. I was supposed to attend the Peace River Regional District meeting tomorrow on behalf of Bear Beach, because she's in town. But unfortunately, due to work schedules and overruns, and the fact that I got to leave town next month and I'm gone for a month, I won't be able to make tomorrow's meeting. So I didn't pass on my regrets to the Peace River Regional District. I would love to get
What happens in such a circumstance?
They have, as long as they have quorum. Yeah, I'm the alternate, so as long as they have quorum, they just Puskupi doesn't have a seat at the table. Yeah, voice on
They
this.
don't have representation tomorrow?
We don't have representation, but they do have quorum, so the meeting will still go as planned.
Mr. Ball.
Are there any items on the agenda for the PRD that would be affecting Puskupi?
To my understanding, it's mostly just budgeting items that they're going through for their general budget. So, I haven't, like I said, with not being able to attend, I haven't got in depth with their agenda. It's posted on their website. But anything we have, you can have Miss or have Mayor Beach follow up on the next one. Just like I said, due to scheduling, I'm just not able to make it.
Well, this is the first time that I've seen this happen in anyways, since I've been on council. So, is there the potential for another member to attend so that we have a voice?
We don't have one.
No, because they have to be, because you have to be sworn
Yeah.
in and you have
Okay.
to be appointed and everything else. So.
Yes, you have one member and an alternate, I believe.
It'd be no different if somebody couldn't make it to an NDIT meeting or a tourism meeting, or you can send your alternate, your
Oh,
alternate can't
The
make it.
mayor attends all of my meetings and she's not in any of the portfolios.
Yeah, but that's just.
But it's not PRD.
You can attend as a guest in the
You just don't
audience,
vote.
like, anybody can attend those.
Mr. Riley.
I apologize. I actually forgot that I attended as a silent alternate to the NDIT meeting because Mayor Beach's the primary was attending, just to kind of see, because the NDIT meetings only happen quarterly. I wanted to just get more information. And boy, oh boy, there are some very exciting projects that other communities have had approved in regards to recreation. And then the other thing too is pawing over the budgetary numbers. They've got some fun spreadsheets that I'm really excited to share with folks.
And yeah, that's all I got for mine.
What do we do about Mayor Beach's report?
She's not here.
Excellent. Question period, here we go.
Well, sorry, no, just one tiny one. March 22nd is Good Friday the next week. Just for clarification.
Yes, it is.
Just in council calendars. I should have brought it up then. I do apologize.
Did I put it on the wrong one? Oh, yes, I'll
It's
correct that. Yes.
a thing of minor technicality. I apologize.
Oh yeah, we close on the 22nd and then we open on the 1st.
All right, we're on to question period. Any questions? Rise and report. And a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion on the adjourn.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm